This is a bit of a pickle, isn't it? Let's see where we are. We're in almost at the end of week two of the wonderful Ukraine counteroffensive. I don't know about you, I'm not too impressed about the results. You keep hearing about how Ukraine are going to do this and we're going to achieve that and we're going to achieve this and that and the other. It turned out to be all false promises and has cost many Ukrainian lives. So let's have a little look what this counteroffensive has achieved apart from a bit of back and forth in four villages, absolutely nothing. Um, they've had another go at Bakhmut, or Artyomovsk, as the Russians would call it. That's failed spectacularly. They've got wiped out there, and they've lost quite a few men, over 375 in that region. They lost over 7,500 men inside um, 10 days, which is really rather careless. There are tons of scrap metal now on the Ukrainian steppe, where they actually tried to uh, make a superb counter-offensive with the minesweepers, and the minesweepers got destroyed, and the tanks decided to drive round them into the minefield in the middle of the day, or indeed in the dark by trying to make a charge across a minefield. Both ended spectacularly badly, and their minesweepers are destroyed. What I am very, very confused about is having lost all these Bradleys. And by the way, please don't refer to the Leopards as German. The Germans get very upset about that. They're Ukrainian tanks once they leave their factory and land on Ukrainian soil. You don't see the French saying too much about all their artillery that's got destroyed. Maybe they have a bit more sense of realism than to try and duck away. The German armies are literally turning around and saying, these are not our tanks once they leave our shores. Okay. We've also got Ben Wallace begging the Ukrainians not to use the Challengers because obviously they want to sell quite a few of those Challengers. And after months and months of telling people um, that this war is no longer about tanks and aircraft carriers and men on foot, it's about drones, it's about artillery, it's about missiles, it's about air defense. The lunacy that you would go and attack somewhere where you have no air cover whatsoever, and people who were in the Falklands would know exactly what that was like when everybody was very, very worried about the possibility. And indeed, that was the reason the Belgrano was sank, because everybody was very, very worried about the fact that the Belgrano might be able to damage the aircraft carrier, and everybody knows and everybody knew how important it was to have air cover and not to be at the mercy of the Argentinian Air Force. Uh, Such was that worry that the conqueror was then told to take the Belgrano down. To fight a war without any air cover and to encourage the Ukrainians, as the Americans are doing time and time again, is utter madness. It really is. And what we also have to look at here is the amount of nonsense that is coming from America on this issue. There are three or four things I want to highlight here. First of all, you had General Milley saying the morale is sky high. Well, it's not, because quite a few Ukrainian units were asked to go into Zaporozhye and absolutely refused. That doesn't sound like people who are high on morale, if you ask me. Um, he also turned around and said the Russians have no idea what they're doing there on the front lines. Really, they just suddenly turned around one day and said, "Why am I wearing this uniform?" And I just happened to come across these trenches. I have no idea what they're doing here, but I'm going to stop here anyway. You've never heard so much nonsense in your life. They've also failed to get Eastern NATO to go and attack them because they want Eastern NATO, especially Poland, to talk to the other Eastern NATO nations so they don't have to commit American troops, British troops, German or French into the battlefield. And this is a major problem for NATO because quite a few of the Eastern European countries, Hungary and Serbia among them, are very, very reluctant to do so and in fact want to remain neutral. And it is very amusing to me that the Czech Republic and the Poles heads of state seem to be quite up for doing this, but the people of their country have no thirst for it whatsoever. In fact, it's deeply unpopular in most Eastern European nations. The other thing that is quite staggering, isn't it, is when you declare as a neutral, that's not really allowed. Victoria Nuland, who always seems to turn up and there tends to be civil war, um, made a visit to Hungary not so long back, and now we're hearing the first strains of Orban has to go, and various amounts of money that were poured into Ukraine at the time when they overthrew Yanukovych, and that was done by the National Endowment for Democracy, who arranged the entire coup. And this, let's be absolutely straight here. Were it not for Victoria Nuland and the Americans' intervention through the funding of the Ukraine, these lunatics now running Ukraine, this war would never have happened. Putin would never have had to go into Ukraine. And there are three main aims that he stated, and he still stands by them. When those three are all done, then he's quite happy to return home. Uh, of course, they will not be able to terrorize the Russian-speaking people of the Donbass again. Those days are over, and anybody who thinks they're going to move Russia out of Ukraine is not throwing straight dice, I would say. But it is also amusing that we've also found out in the last 24 hours that Kosovan special forces, complete with satellite phones and explosives, were caught by the Serbian military, sneaking into Serbia, as I say, with satellite phones and explosives on them. And apparently, when caught, they actually turn around and say they were there to pick mushrooms. A couple of miles inside. That seems a long way to go for mushrooms. I somehow have an idea that they're more intent on creating a mushroom cloud than actually getting mushrooms. This is now going to be a bit of a smack in the nose for the Americans and for the people who will not let other people just be neutral. You must pick a side, and if you don't, we'll pick one for you or punish you because of it. I will be live on Sunday at around 7 o'clock. So if anybody, by all means, I'll be catching up the whole week on the war. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to come into the chat and have a word. And if you're a troll, please stay away. We deal in the real truth, and we try to deal with sensible human beings. Thank you very much for your time, and enjoy your weekend.